Oh, jeez.
Good morning, everyone, and
You're muted. She's good.
welcome to the July provider meeting. This morning's been a little different since we are doing the meeting starting this month at the Pickerington Regional Office. This is in person now. We still have Zoom available for anyone who's not able to attend in person. I am recording this. I will have it listed on the Excellence Network and the past provider meetings along with all the material that you'll be presented today. So you can rewatch the taping or pull up any of the information that you have today. Just a quick announcement, Tina Smith had asked for anyone who's going to be responding to the RFPs. In addition to making sure that you add the person's initials, please make sure that the email that you're submitting is the same email that the county board has listed. So when you get information from us that's emailed, make sure that email is the same because that's the email that Tina will reach out to you. And if you're submitting the information with a different email, she will not be able to get in touch with you about the RFP. So if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Tina Smith. She's over at the SSA campus. So I am going to introduce, we have 2 10 members today that will be facilitating the meeting. Courtney Ogg and Aaron Johnson. So Courtney, if you don't mind.
I'm Courtney Ogg. I'm the Director of Community Assisted Living. We provide services.
Let's look at the other stuff together.
I'll get it together.
All right, there you go.
Sorry. I just wanted to join the meeting, I didn't want to
And
play.
just so you know, the camera's up there.
Okay, cameras are here. I'm Courtney with Community Assisted Living. I'm the director there. We provide residential services in Fairfield County, also in Pickaway County. We have, we're trying to grow a little bit more, oh my gosh.
Is that weird stuff?
Yeah. We do have refreshments over here for everybody that's in person.
It's not better, huh? Is it yours? It's not. It's up there.
Just me. Okay, so that, okay. Okay, we do have refreshments for everybody that's here in person. Bathrooms are out in the hallway. Trying to remember everything else I need to go over. For everybody here in the there's a raffle for everybody that's attending in person for a $25 gift card.
Woo-hoo.
I think that's it, but I will hand it over to Aaron.
I'm Aaron Johnston. I just took over as the ADS manager at the Fairfield Center for Disabilities. So I'm 3 weeks in. This is all new. What am I supposed to do?
To put their name in the email.
Yeah, just again, a reminder to put your names in the drawing. Mute your cell phones, put them on silent. If you're in person, take your call outside if it's an emergency. Today, our speakers are Rachel McCoy with Fulfilling Lives and Molly Kiarney with Art Possible Ohio.
Perfect.
Cool.
Take it away, Rachel.
Okay, do you want me to share my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Now you don't have to worry about your presence.
There we go. We got a couple more coming in. So I am happy to be in person, I hope. Like this seems kind of like on and off, back and forth. I'm happy to see faces. So I'm Rachel McCoy. I work for Fairfield County Board of DD and I'm Community Connections Coordinator. So today, the presentation that I'm gonna do is called Leading Fulfilling Lives. So we're basically just gonna go through, some things that we can do to help providers work with the people that they're supporting on helping them build better lives. So this is gonna be weird on here, but let me try to go through. Okay, so at the Board of DD, our mission is, which most of you already know, to bring about a vibrant community where people lead fulfilling lives and make meaningful contributions. I put some definitions on here of exactly what those words mean, because I think a lot of times there are words that can be maybe misconstrued, or depending on the person, they can mean different things. So when I looked up the word vibrant in the dictionary, it said full of life, energy, and enthusiasm. So we would like our community to look like that, full of life of all different kinds of people, energy, enthusiasm, all different aspects of that. Fulfilling said making someone satisfied because of fully developing their character and abilities and to achieve and accomplish. I think fulfilling looks different for each different one of us, and I'm gonna go through that a little bit in just a second. And also meaningful in the dictionary means significant or important. So I just wanted to kind of map that out a little bit before we start moving forward. So let me go through these a little bit. So my goal, so as community connections coordinator, these are some of the things that I do on a daily basis with my role at the board. Connecting individuals to existing recreation, social, leisure, and educational activities in the community. So, you know, when you're working with someone specific and they have something that they're interested in, I help people find those opportunities in the community and get them involved. Supporting the provider community and finding inclusive events and activities that focus on individual goals. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, as well as empowering people to increase independence, reach their potential, and help them lead more fulfilling lives. Hence where fulfilling lives comes in. So a fulfilling life can be different for each one of us. And for me, a fulfilling life means meaningful work. I like to volunteer, especially with teens, family activities with my kids, running my kids around. Sometimes I don't love that, but I think it gives me a little bit more value. I don't know. We'll ask them. Taking walks with them, going to movies, reading with them each day, like doing things with them that is meaningful for them. Personally, for myself, I'm a photographer. Photography is one of my passions. I like to scrapbook, crafts, exercise, and yoga when those things kind of fit in with the kids' schedule. And so I think that looks different for every single person. So since we're on Zoom and in person, I was gonna ask if anyone has any ideas of things that make their lives more fulfilling, and I guess someone can see it in the chat. Or what are some things that they enjoy in their life that are specific to them? Don't everybody jump at once.
I coach softball for, my daughter and her friends, so.
What age is that?
8.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it's super, it's step up from T-ball, so.
Good, thank you.
Did you play softball?
Yes.
I like to garden. I've been signed up to be a deadheader at the park near our house.
What do you do as a deadhead?
Take the dead things off the
Take all
plants.
the, because flowers will bloom more if you take the old ones off.
I do that at home.
Yeah, I
You
did.
come to my house and do that.
Pastimes.
Stress relief to me.
Oh, I have a lunch for you.
Sign me up.
I can't tell on Zoom.
Um,
Oh, Allison,
you read it.
I like to go fishing, play pool, and go see live music. Yep, cool. Anybody else? That was more responsive than I thought. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I want to play a video for you that probably may be familiar with some of the people, with some of the providers. This is a video from Starfire from Cincinnati. And they are a visionary organization working to build better lives for people with disabilities. I've just recently I've had a few meetings with some of the people from Starfire, and they have podcasts and YouTube. They have tons of information, and they're very, very, very good. So I'm gonna show you this real quick.
There are so many ways to spend a day, but imagine this one. Your mom wakes you up. She drops you off at the same place you've been going every day for 15 years. You spend the next 8 hours with people who are only here because they share one thing in common. Everyone here is living with a disability. Well, not everyone. Staff members plan your day, drive you places, make decisions for you, cook your meals, and determine what activities you do and when you do them. These are caring, compassionate people, but hanging out with you is their job. And come to think of it, everyone here either has to be here or gets paid to be here. Then Dad picks you up. You head home and spend the rest of your day and evening with your family. From morning to night, your relationships reflect what's wrong with you. And now imagine if this was your day. How would you feel? Maybe you'd feel lonely or purposeless or empty. Maybe you'd feel frustrated or controlled. For most people living with disabilities, this isn't imagination, and it isn't just a day. It's every day. And no one should have to feel like this or live this way. So imagine if no one had to. Imagine if people with disabilities could have relationships where they truly belong, instead of being confined to relationships born out of obligation. Relationships that don't clock in or out, connections made over common interests, opportunity to share the best of you with the world instead of just sitting in the reflection of what's wrong with you. Imagine if people with disabilities got to live like everyone else. The folks at Starfire believe this is how it should be, and they exist to help people with disabilities find these kinds of relationships so they can step out of a day that no one would choose and into the days that they deserve. Now imagine if you could make all the difference in the world to a person living with a disability just by inviting them into your everyday life. Help someone spend their day differently. Go to starfirecouncil.org to get involved.
So I'm hoping that we can possibly have Starfire or someone from Starfire come and speak at a provider meeting or an overall county board meeting maybe. But I think that video portrays the world pretty well. So if we imagine that people with disabilities get to live like everyone else, you know, you and I, like me at the county board, and all of us at the county board and the providers, we get to experience the opportunity to be able to do that for them. Making their dreams become reality every day. So for me, this is the part of my job that I dig. Like, I want to be able to help people find what they love and be able to do that. So oftentimes this is a really difficult conversation. There's a couple of different tools that we're going to talk about today that I've used to help work with people, and I have a couple stories, and then this is going to be the beginning of the Fulfilling Lives. We're going to continue this every quarter. So this will be the beginning, and then we'll work on different kind of ways to learn how to do that throughout, the next year?
Forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
Okay, forever. So I believe that people are limited to what they've already experienced. People don't know what you don't know. So I think that sometimes that can be scary. So it's hard to have that conversation with someone to get them out of their comfort zone and kind of work with them to find new things that they may be interested in, because they have had a bad, and if they may have had a bad experience once, they may be like, I'm never gonna do that again, I'm not touching that again. But I think it's important to go through the different steps to continue to educate them on the different things, and then try the new things over and over again to keep on moving forward. So up on the screen, ask important questions, and then ask again, and observe, and then ask again. So that's what I mean by if you ask the question and you ask Sally if she wants to learn or to go boating, and Sally doesn't like to go boating that day. I mean, if you have more conversation, build more relationships with that person, you might find out there's a reason why she doesn't like to go boating, and it may have nothing to do with boats, insanely enough. So the second part of that is to build a list or a map of what the person wants their life to look like. So we're going to talk about vision boards in a little while, but there are lots of different ways, different kinds of maps that you can build. Some of them that I've written down are life course mapping, relationship maps. Some of us did a relationship map project at a center 2 weeks ago. There's also a hobbies and interests inventory, and then vision boards. So the reason we're going to talk about vision boards today is because those are the vision boards I know the most about, and I've used the most, and it's worked the best. So we're going to have an activity where we're going to work on ourselves so that we can learn how to then use that knowledge to help other people. So then after that build phase, the next step should be seek out the inclusive opportunities, find out the details. So if you're working with someone one-on-one and they really enjoy photography, and you find out that it's not just the camera that they actually like to take the pictures, because sometimes there's those misconstrued things. You can find inclusive opportunities in the community, get the details, make sure that works with their schedule, get them involved in that, be part of that with them, but then also step back and let that be part of what they're doing on their own. So this is the easy part, right? Go do the things. If those things don't work, go back to the beginning, ask again, do all those steps over and over and over again, build again, seek again, and do again. So it's try new things. I have down there on the bottom because I think sometimes we also get too wrapped up in someone's outcome says they want these 3 specific things. So those are the 3 specific things that we look at, and we don't ever think about what could they want other than that. Like just go try something new and see how those things work out. So it is our job to help people stretch a little bit and come out of their comfort zones a little bit and find those different things that they can be involved in. So I have an example, and I'm gonna try not to say this person's name or the center's name, which is gonna be difficult for me. So
You got this.
yeah, so we have someone that we were working with who, in their outcome was that they were a sports fan, period. And that they maybe could enjoy going to restaurants that were sports related, like Roosters or BW3s. And that was literally it. That was it. That's all I knew. So this person came to a group that I am part of. I partner with Social in a group called Solutions for Life for Self-Advocacy. And we work on different values that people may or may not know about, like attitude, goal setting, the list goes on and on and on, but this week we were talking about goals. So we did the whole value about goals, we had a big conversation about it, and then we made vision boards. So I gave out the same list that you guys have today, and for you guys on Zoom, we're gonna put that up on the screen here in just a second. But we went through all the pieces, we made the vision board, and I realized that this person loved baseball. I had no idea that this person loved baseball. I knew this person would be a sports fan, period. That's all I knew. So he cut out pieces and parts of different baseball stadiums and baseballs and things like that. And I'm like, this is really amazing. I had no idea that you loved baseball this much. And he said, I want to be a coach. I want to coach baseball in any way, shape, or form. And I was like, okay, cool. So let's work on that. So we started with that and we built a little bit. This person was also a part of Kiwanis, and Kiwanis has Little League Baseball. So why would we not combine those 2 things? So we got him involved in baseball. He was a Little League coach for Kiwanis for the last couple of months and loved it, absolutely loved it. He wanted to come to meetings and talk about it and tell the scores of the games, even though we weren't keeping scores of the games.
We're always keeping score.
We're always keeping score, right? But then after that, just this past week at Solutions for Life, he came to me and said, I really enjoyed that. Baseball's over. I want to do football now. So that one piece grew into the next piece that we're getting him involved in, Lancaster, Gales Football League with the little kids. And so he is gonna go forward with that. So that one activity taught us something that we didn't know about him before, or I didn't know about him before, and gave us something to go on. So I think sometimes, we just ask the questions, and sometimes, somebody's having a bad day, they don't want to answer those questions. I have those days all the time when I'm like, I don't want a people today. I don't want you to talk to me about peopling today. I want to talk about what I want, what I don't want. So you have to just keep revisiting. And I think the vision boards and the different maps are a good way to show that in a visual way. And I think Pam can allude to this more, but I think our brains process better with pictures. So I think that's one of the things that I really like about the vision boards too. So
Rachel, real quick before you
Yeah.
go on, something else I think is really important that you mentioned, was not, because we wanna not keep the dependency of, if I need an opportunity, I'm gonna keep coming to you. So he actually asked for the number and contact. to
Absolutely.
reach out to keep
yeah,
going.
he asked me for the coach's number and for the phone number. I said I will get you the information because I didn't know if they were accepting volunteers or participants. So I reached out to the coach for him, and then the next step is going to be give him the number and let him work all those things out on his own. Absolutely.
Well, honestly, sometimes if I have somebody who knows somebody, I almost ask them to connect us.
Right.
So that first one is that connection, and then that would be the person that would.
Yep. Okay, so I don't know who could put the vision board up here. Okay, so you guys have the paper in front of you. I do. You don't, okay, sorry. There you go.
Thanks.
So I'm gonna go through a couple of these things real quick. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna do this for, oh, sorry,
And
for ourselves.
Stop share, just, share.
Okay,
You don't have to get out of camera, just.
okay. There we go. Is that good? Okay, so we're gonna fill out, these are the planning stages of vision boards. I'm not gonna have you guys cut out pictures and put them on paper or anything like that today. But I also wanted to suggest, I've made vision boards on apps on my phone and then saved them to my screen when my lock screen. Jeez, can't even get it out, my lock screen. So it doesn't have to be on paper, it doesn't have to be cutting things out, it could be whatever people want to do. And I like the phone choice because you see it every time you open your phone and it reminds you of the things that your goals are. So on the vision board, it says visualizing my best year ever under health, business, family, relationships, all those different boxes on there. And on the other sheet is how to use it. So I like the questions because sometimes people will stare at this page and go, I have no idea. Like sometimes you have to really have prompts to think about it, but the questions, what would you like to create in your life? What would you like to do? What do you value? Those questions sometimes are easier to do first and then fill in the boxes. But I think the planning stage is important because it gives you the next step that goes into the board. So I'm gonna share my board with you. You guys on Zoom won't be able to see it, but we did this with a group of teenagers that I also work with. And so this was the vision board that I did on that day. I'm gonna not go into big detail about all these things, but I'm gonna explain to you a couple pieces so that you kind of get an idea if you've never done this before. So bananas, right? What the heck? Why would I put bananas on there? Because my goal for the beginning of the year was to eat better, right? I made it in January. Everybody wants to exercise more. Everybody wants to eat better. Everybody wants to get their lives together in January. I had pictures down here that I cut out magazines of hiking because I really want those to be my exercise things. Like I enjoy that part of exercise instead of going to the gym a little bit more. So I expanded on that a little bit. There's a picture down here in the bottom of books because I have a stack of books in my room this high that I really want to read. And I'm like, I'm going to get through all those books this year. They're important and I'm going to do this thing. Vacation, we weren't planning on going, this is why I love vision boards. We weren't gonna go on vacation in a very, beachy place this year because, well, inflation. And it's hard to come up with the money. But I had it on my board and I looked at it every day and I hoped for it every single day. And all of a sudden, miraculously, my husband was like, we're gonna go on vacation. So it's not all gonna work that easy, but I feel like if you have that vision and you see it and you think about it all the time, your mind is a powerful thing. So I think you can put those things into action. I'm gonna go one more and then I'll let you guys start working. But I put this up in the corner, run your life, don't let your life run you, because I have this tendency to not have boundaries and I don't say no very often. So I was trying to put into play, hey, I'm gonna not do all the things, I'm gonna do a couple things really good and take back and not do all the things. So this is me, but this should look completely different for you guys and for every single person that you're working with. But I think, like I said, it gives you a good visual, it gives your mind, your mind will process those things and think about things if you look at them every day. I also write things on the mirror in my house. The kids think I'm crazy sometimes, but those little dry erase markers wipe right off of the mirror. It's really great. So if you guys want to go through those worksheets a little bit, then we can talk about what that looks like for you. And then I'm going to encourage you guys to take that back and do that with some of the people that you're supporting. We're going to come back quarterly. So when will I be doing this again? October? So the goal will be to work on those things with people that you're supporting, bring back some ideas, good, bad, whatever. This worked, this didn't. And also you'll be able to contact me and I can help you get the resources for those other maps as well. Also, when we come back the next time around, we're gonna start teaching, it's kind of like a curriculum. It's a whole plan about how to do this even deeper, to go even deeper with these kind of activities. So I haven't read all about that yet, but I'm gonna read all about it and we're gonna do it next time. So if you guys wanna take a couple minutes to do work on those, then we can reconvene and go over the results and see if we can work on it from there.
So we're doing this for
For you personally, yep.
I don't have a pen either.
Oh, here's,
I should have grabbed one from Kathy last time.
I think it's good to go through it but for ourselves so that we can learn and then to be able to teach it with someone else.
Got it, and like,
Got it. Time's not up. That is not your timer. That's not either. everybody kind of good? A good spot to stop? Yeah. I'm still writing. My arm's falling off over there.
Alright.
I don't wanna wait too long, but. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, the questions. I can't tell about the chat, but let's see. Is there, can you see the chat in? Anything, does anybody, if anybody wants to share, they can put it in the chat or they can unmute, right?
Feel free to unmute yourself.
No, nobody? I can't tell from here. Okay, anybody here wanna share? Before I call on people.
What are we sharing, a question here first? I didn't even get to those yet.
Yeah, whatever you wanna share.
Alright.
Did you have a revelation?
It's just the same.
The questions aren't 100% necessary, I guess, unless you have a problem doing the other part. So the questions are just to help you kind of open up your brain a little bit and go with that. So if you wanna talk about your boxes, that's fine too. There's no real right or wrong answer. It's just thinking outside of the box of the norm a little bit and thinking about things you may not think about all the time, you know? Seriously, no one wants to share. Kyle Miller, what do you got?
What do you want me to share?
I don't know, just tell me about
Let me
you.
share some of the-
Tell me what your vision board would look like.
Your vision, I mean, where I am in my life, my vision board should be pretty obvious because I'm.
It should be like retirement.
Well, that's in there, right? I'm not quite ready because we haven't changed the system so that everybody's doing this stuff for the people that support.
Okay, let's not talk about work.
So you're not
But
retired.
that's a pretty big part of what I do. Because tied to everything else I do in my life, whether it's my family or people in my life, I like to see them improve and grow in their lives. That's what kind of makes me thrive, so that's why I like working.
Okay,
How's that?
you got no other goals?
Retire, see the world. I like,
Okay,
what's
that's
this
boring.
one?
Anybody else?
No, this one, no, wait, I want to do this one. It says, if money was no object, I see, I would retire and see all the places in the world that I want to see, which would take me the rest of my life. So,
Okay.
as boring as it is, that's it. You asked.
Thank you.
You should have known it was pretty boring.
Yeah, so with my family, I realize we are just all in tech. Tech is always, like, our attention is always divided amongst lots of things. And if I don't have something in my face, my brain is always in other places, as some other people might have the same thing. So it was just to be more intentional, step away from tech, everybody, and giving our undivided attention to one another more often.
Perfect. So if you were to make that a picture to put on a board, what would that look like?
I think it would be like people laughing and hanging out in their backyard, like playing games and having a good time. Like something outside probably, because that's where I like to be.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna put my screen back up there. Does anybody else want to hear any good things about them? Jamie,
Dang.
I can't see you. I know you're back there.
What'd you ask? Sorry.
Let's talk about your vision board.
Oh, okay. Mine's kind of boring, so, a lot of things about being more active and eating better, taking better care of myself, just mentally, like my lifestyle, things like that. Saving money, paying down debt and saving money, you mentioned vacation. Things like just boring things. I don't have anything extraordinary.
Even the little things matter.
I do.
Every little piece matters.
Spending more time with family I don't see very often. Well, I put quality time.
Okay, so let's talk about stories about maybe people that you work with where people have shown progress in different ways, even the little things. So it could be anything small, but those are the things we're gonna focus on. Did you wanna share?
I just said F5.
Oh, yeah, learning computer tricks.
Oh, I'm like, what are you talking about?
That's a story for
I'm
another
so
day.
proud of you. So does anybody have any, I mean, I know there are good things happening, and I think sometimes we get frustrated in the fact that things don't feel like they're moving quick enough. And the little things aren't the big deal, like Jamie said, but the little things make a big difference and they build up quickly. So I guess this is where we're gonna go with this series. We're gonna try to talk about, share some stories of people that you're working with that are doing great things, or they're doing great things for them, or whatever that looks like, so that we can see the positive, because I think a lot of times we get focused on what's not happening instead of what is happening.
Well, can we like share a past client?
Yes, please.
So we don't delve into the privacy stuff.
Sure, yeah.
because She passed on and she died from COVID.
Mhm.
And I worked with her for 2.5 years. And she had Down syndrome, but also she had behaviors and her parents couldn't take her anywhere. So I managed it took about a year that I was able to actually trust that I could take her anywhere and she would behave herself. And that made me feel really good, but we got super close and it was like her daughter I never had. And, she didn't want anybody else but me to come around, and they had to have a weekend provider. And that didn't go over real well, but the girls stuck it out. But yeah, when I lost her, that was rough. She died from COVID and no vaccination or anything.
Were there things that you were working on with her specifically that she showed progress in?
Mainly, not reacting when she couldn't get her way.
What did she like though?
Huh?
What did she like?
She liked to eat.
Mhm.
She liked to go out and eat.
That's a
That
problem for
had to
me
be
too.
on the agenda every day.
Yeah.
That we'd go someplace to go out to eat, but she had to behave in order to get that.
Okay.
Cause I literally drove out of McDonald's drive-through one day because she was getting angry because she had a Pepsi and she wanted a sweet tea.
Oh.
And I go, well, you've already got a Pepsi. We talked about it before we got in line. I said, so we're just gonna get your usual food that you like, and then you've already got Pepsi. So I could tell she was getting angry. I said, no, you're getting angry. Not me. I said, yeah, you're getting angry. And so, I said, okay, we're going home.
What else did she like? She liked to eat?
That was the main thing.
Yeah,
I introduced her to a lot of things she'd never done before.
like what?
Well, we went to the zoo and we went to I'm trying to think what that place is there on Broad. That
Cooksack?
park.
Was it park?
Yeah, the
Franklin Woods.
Franklin Park Conservatory. We went there and, now it's a struggle because we just started out and she was like, every picture I took of her, she had a frown on her face.
Mhm.
And then the second time we went, they had trains and she really liked trains. I don't know why, but she really liked trains, and every time we crossed the train track, we'd go, choo choo, train ride.
Right.
Yeah. So, it took a while to get to know her and get to know what she liked and what would set her off, and my goal was to keep her happy, but not give in to her when she threw a fit.
Sure.
Because she would literally, I drove out at McDonald's parking lot, she was kicking my dashes, calling me names and screaming just top of her lungs, and I go, that doesn't work. That won't work with me. So we went home, I fixed her peanut butter and jelly, and I went home. That's one good thing about being an independent, you can pull yourself away from the situation. Because, when she doesn't have an audience, there's no reason to continue with that behavior. So, I learned a lot from her. Because I never worked with anybody like that before. And there were times I'd go home in tears and wonder, what am I gonna do? How can I keep doing this? And
So I think that's good, because I was thinking the same thing, like I wondered if anybody had ever had experience when you're, we've had experiences, probably more experience trying new things and doing things, but we work with a lot of people who have very limited experience doing anything. So when you're filling these vision boards out, or when you're doing these like kind of planning to figure out what that looks like, I was just curious to see like where do people go, like what do you do? Like having a conversation about, I mean, I find these questions to be hard for myself. And so I'm just thinking, like, when you're talking with somebody who's had real experience with lots of things in life, where do you begin? Does anybody have experience with that, or anybody on the or do you have a practice that you already use, kind of getting to know somebody?
Well, I'm gonna build on what you said about the trains. So if you didn't know that she liked she went to Franklin Park and found out that she liked the trains. I think from there, where my mind goes is to find out why. Like, what was the experience? Was it just seeing the trains? Was it maybe she would like to go ride a train? You know, what is that? Those are the dig deeper parts, like the pieces of what do you like about this thing? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's awesome to go try the new things because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if you've never done this before, I mean, there may be extremes to that too. Like, I used to think I wanted to skydive and now I'm older and I don't want to skydive because I'm scared. But like trying out the things and then finding out what is it about those things.
Yeah.
So on the flip side
She
of
was
that,
scared of bridges. And I didn't find that out till we went to Dawes Arboretum, and now there's one little bridge that goes
Yeah.
out to that little island. She would not cross over that bridge.
Yeah.
And then we went to Franklin Park Conservatory, and they have a little bridge that you don't notice because all the vegetation that's growing up on both sides. And she just followed me right across it.
yeah, I think all these experiences are about growing. They're all about finding the piece and then building on that. So on the reverse side of that, I had a conversation with someone a couple weeks ago, and we went through an interest inventory list, which is just like, here's all the hobbies I can possibly think of, and do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? Well, that doesn't always work depending on the day, but the part about that I do like is if you say, do you like to exercise? Yes. Well, which parts about exercise? Running, hiking, da 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 da. And this person said, I don't want to run. No, nothing about that. And then I found out later from someone that had a better relationship with that person that they used to run all the time with their father, but their father had passed away. So that was the piece that was missing. It wasn't that she didn't want to run. It was that running reminded her of being with her father who had passed away. So I think the relationship part, like building up to those things, like when you learn about those things, expanding from there. Does that make sense?
Was running in the plan too as something she liked to do?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, I thought there was somebody that you were working with where it was in the plan that they really liked to do something.
That was the boat.
Oh, it was the boat one, okay.
When
And then-
she followed you across the bridge, did you then point to her, hey, look, congratulations, you just went across the bridge?
Yep.
You know, and let her acknowledge that it didn't hurt her and that she did good.
Yeah, it's all about the growth, I think. The boat story, let me see if I can tell the boat story the right way. So in someone's plan, it had that one of their outcomes was they really wanted to go on a charter boat, a fishing charter boat. And when I asked the person if they wanted to do that, they said, I don't wanna fish. I'm not an outdoorsy person. I don't wanna have anything to do with fishing or anything like that. But they had done it in the past, but then they were at a new place and they didn't wanna do that anymore. So like, this could get a lot more deep than this, but like in the plan, if it says this one thing, that doesn't necessarily mean that's now.
Right.
And I mean, and those spans are over a year. I mean, we could go into all details about this, but that was something that she did before and enjoyed it that time. But now, that wasn't what she wanted. But then we figured out she did like to be on the boat, but she didn't like the fishing aspect. So it's like you have to ask all those itty bitty little details to come up with it. It seems like you're a private investigator sometimes, but it's amazing when you find the piece and then you can expand from there. And then I feel like once you work with that person and you help them with that, finding that thing that gives their life, more value and they feel more fulfilled, then they're gonna trust you to do that again. So the person I was talking about with the baseball, when he came back to me and said, how can I do this? because he knew that I helped him do the other part. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it's all about relationships, it's all about building trust with people and
Very
being
much so.
able to dig into what really makes them happy, really happy. What makes them fulfilled, what makes them, gives their life a purpose.
And I think the one story that you had shared, and it's not just, I think we get in the habit of, there's the big N and of the community, right? And so we work a lot times with people who just are takers, they're receivers of the community. They experience things and they're in spaces, but they're not contributing and giving things. And that fulfillment comes from, a lot of times, we were all fulfilled by our work because we're giving our work. And I think that we miss that point a lot of times when we're talking with people and working through these vision boards. It's like, not just places where you can receive things, but where do you feel like you can give? What are your gifts to give to the world? And how do you then help people make those connections to start giving those gifts to the world too?
Yeah, we put that on her plan to do more community action kind of stuff and things,
Yeah.
So we tried the food bank, working there. And she just, she would go through the motions, but she just really didn't enjoy it. You know what she did enjoy was going to the park and picking up trash.
Nice. Yeah.
And I would tell her, what a good job, and she'd get that exercise bending over and picking something up. And her mom said, oh, well, you should wear gloves, or you should get one of those things, those grabbers. And I go, no, she needs the exercise. I said, I got wipes in the car when we're done. And she every time I'd say, well, let's go pick up trash at the park. She'd go, basketball park? I go, yeah, we can go there.
Yeah.
That was always the
Groups that do
dirtiest
that
one.
too, yeah, like there's volunteer groups who will go and do that kind
And
of
we
stuff.
would get comments from people that were there at the park, oh, that's so nice that you're doing that. I said, well, she likes to do it, so.
All right. Well, the last piece I had up there was who do you know that has made some progress? So I would like for you guys to think about that more, but, are we gonna share, we're gonna talk about these things every provider meeting. Like, if you have something come up that you're just like, yeah, this happened, let's talk about it. I think it's really important to share the positive. But like I said, quarterly, we're gonna go into a little bit deeper of how to do this. I have some different things I'm working on, but, how can we work with the people and, give them more of a purpose in their life and help let them feel that and then build on that. So that's what I got. Thank you. Yes?
You probably could have said that out loud, everybody, but I'd have heard it.
Okay, what?
Just do it.
Why don't you say that?
So this is a really good time for us to ask the 10 members that are on to share a little bit about any progress or success that they've had with their service documentation. So I know we have several 10 members on, so if you guys would like to share little snippets of what you guys have experienced, this is the time to do it. Service documentation. Outcomes. Progress on outcomes. And
Not so much how we're documenting, but the outcomes from.
yeah, the outcomes, the
That we
progress on
have.
outcomes that
Okay. So I can just talk about a little bit. Basically, all of our folks had a vacation goal. They all wanted to go someplace different. And so in March, we made this big itinerary. It took 3 weeks and we all went. And let me tell you, there were things on that list I would have never planned to do. But we all did it. And swimming with the dolphins was one. I probably wouldn't have picked that for me. But that was the best part of the one, I thought. Diane, what you thinking about that? But swimming with the dolphins was awesome. Awesome. And everybody participated. The staff were wonderful there. The last two individuals that did the dolphin, they was like, no. They was very hesitant, but they was able to get them with the dolphins and they actually swam with them. So that was very cool. But we did 3 weeks. They all got to do, so everyone had a specific place they wanted to go. And we all went to those specific places. And we built in rest days. And then on the rest days, they actually did other things, like they wanted to fly. We was gonna take a plane originally, but with COVID, we decided to drive. But they wound up taking a helicopter flight and when we was in Florida. So it wasn't a plane, it was a helicopter, which is pretty cool. So the folks that wanted to do that, did that. And it was individualized when we was in hotels and at places, at destinations, that they could do what they wanted to do and then other things that was available to them. But that was cool, like, they're ready to go again, like. "You can do this again."
I wanna go.
Yeah. So it was fun, it was a good trip, we didn't have anything major go wrong, it worked out really well, I was kind of surprised. So, we did good with that, Diane, there was 9 of us total, yeah, so, it was good.
Cool.
It was good, I can't complain, so we met those goals, they all got to go where they wanted to go and do what they wanted to do and see what they wanted to see and, you know, they still wanna go in an airplane, some of them, and so that's gonna happen hopefully later. We'll plan a plane trip for them to do, so, yeah, it was fun.
So help us figure out, Kim, when you complete a big goal like that, a big outcome in someone's plan, how do we go back to the ISP team and that person's group that's around them and say, okay, so we've done this, we've accomplished this, what's next? What's that conversation like for that?
Well, I think what's next is we kind of we don't make suggestions.
Sure.
We listen to what they're saying. So, like one of the girls called me up the other day and said she wanted to go to SeaWorld. Well, I said, oh, okay. Well, I don't think we have a SeaWorld in Ohio anymore. I'd have to figure out where SeaWorld's at. Might be something similar, you know, so we just kind of go with that conversation and let them bring their thoughts to us. I'm not gonna say, okay, so you wanna go someplace else?
Right.
It's just, so our folks live with us, we have a shared living situation, so it's very much family oriented in that sense, and so conversations happen all the time, daily, you know, just like you would at your house. So as things come up, we just talk about those things and their experiences or what's going on that day, and it just leads to other conversations that anybody else would have.
So then how do you bring that into to ISC and then conversing that to the ISC for her then, or him, her to?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on their goal that they're working on, like, you know, what does that look like, how would that fit into whatever, because sometimes it's not like I have to change anything.
Okay.
I can just incorporate it into what we're already doing. I mean, because everybody has their own ISP, obviously, so they all have their own separate goals, what they're working on and what they want to do. So we just kind of see how we can work that in. Like, you know, some of them's kind of broad, like if they want to do Special Olympics this spring, there's a lot of different events. So, you know, they choose what event they want to do, just like, it doesn't have to be a specific event. Because I think a lot of times in our ISPs, we make it so specific, it doesn't give you enough room to work outside of that box. So I always try not to put myself in a box with their goals. Like, I want them to have their goals, but I'm like, okay, does it have to say they're going to swim every year? Why can't it just be whatever they choose to do, whatever activity they choose to do? Because they may not want to swim this year. They may want to bowl or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I really, I'm really specific about when I do my ISPs, when I reread them to make sure that I'm not in a box. Not, you know, wait a minute, that's too, what do I want to say? It's too definitive or too narrow, or it doesn't give them room to expand, you know? So I gotta make sure that, I feel like I gotta make sure I'm looking out for what they wanna do in a way that we don't have to go back to the table and say, okay, I gotta get this changed because now they're doing this. So I kind of leave it kind of broad.
But if there was something they wanted to do like outside of that vacation outcome, that could be an additional outcome that could be added to the person's plan. So they can still work on, you know, vacationing and going to new places, but then if they have a completely different.
But see, my thought about that, it would just be a second vacation. They would have just taken 2 vacations instead of one.
Yeah, SeaWorld, yes, but if it wasn't even vacation, if it was, say they wanted to
Or
join a
a home
softball
game.
team or something, it would
Yeah.
not be a vacation, just join a group. Or
Yeah,
be a part of something that could be a second outcome that that person then was working with, along with still doing vacation.
Sure.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Although my thought about that,
Mhm.
and that we have the ISP goals, initially my thought would be, okay, you wanna go do that, we would just go do it.
Right.
I think that's the problem with outcomes in general, to be
Yeah.
honest, they're so organic to life.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
why I have a problem with
Right. Yeah, we would just be like, okay, you wanna do that? Okay. I wouldn't even think about calling the IC and say, hey, they wanna do this, can we get a goal for it?
Right.
We would just naturally, in our setting, do it.
Right, but we
Just-
have some outcomes that are very specific, like you said, so when that is met, the person has their driver's license, there needs to be something put in
yeah.
its place.
Correct.
There has to be another outcome that,
Yes.
so that when it's met, when the outcome's met,
I'm sorry.
when does that
Yes.
happen where, you know, that conversation is taking place with that person as to what's replacing that outcome that you've
Okay.
now achieved?
Yeah.
That's what I was kind
Yeah,
of getting
I'm
at was, no, that's okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we had a vacation plan for like 2 years because we planned it to go March 2020, okay? So we all know COVID came, and then we said March 2021, and we still didn't go, so we went this year, so we went March this year.
Well, there's a lot that goes into that, I mean, you've
So
got
you
budget,
guys
it's a lot of.
drove out of the state and in the state and
Oh, we was
everything?
gone 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, we was in multiple states. We wound up,
You plan my vacation. Do you have an extra bedroom for me?
yeah. Yeah, we went to
That's
Tennessee, Memphis, Alabama, Missouri, is that one of the, I don't know my states. Yeah, I don't know where was that, Diane, we went to Florida for a week, we stayed in Florida for a week. So we went down one way on the US and we came back up on the coast, and we came up through, went to Savannah, Georgia, we went to North Carolina, this is one of my shirts. We went down to see, who was he? Andy Griffith, yeah, we went down to Mount Airy, that was our last stop. So yeah, we was gone, we went through all those multiple states and, yeah. Like I said, we had really good service at the restaurants. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Only one place where they said they could only take 4 people
That's what they said. There was nobody there.
and not a single person was in
We
there.
had 4 people. 4 in the whole restaurant, 4 people.
Oh.
We're like,
Oh, because of COVID?
4 people. We're like, the same person that's serving must be cooking too. I don't know. But we laughed. That was our joke all the rest of the trip. Like, oh, we can't go, what was it, Outback?
I think it was a Chili's.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember.
That's weird.
I bet you they're no longer in business. I mean,
Oh
how
my
do you do
gosh.
that?
And we tried to eat at a lot of different restaurants too.
Well, the Arby's down there at 256 and 204 right there.
Uh-huh.
You get in the drive-through, the lady goes, I can't take your order because I'm the only one here.
Yeah.
Then why are you open? Why are you open?
Yeah, really.
Or we're out of beef. Like you're Arby's. What do you mean you're out of beef?
Well, I just want to share, we did something fun yesterday, one of, and I can't remember the specific wording of this outcome, but basically it's social and hang out. And so after a conversation, they like music and they like Elvis. And so we went to see the Elvis movie yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So it was way cool.
Yes.
And I learned a lot too, but the person went and just smiled the whole time we were there and just was very excited
You
that.
gotta go to Graceland now, because we went to Graceland on that trip. You gotta go to
Okay.
Graceland. It's awesome.
That's a good list.
But yeah, I mean, I was, again, diving into what, okay, so you like music in general, now let's go, what kind of music and what kind of, and so
Yeah.
having that conversation, we were able to then take it to, well, it happened, the timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Let's go see Elvis.
Oh, that's cool. Yep. We did see the movie too, yeah.
Alrighty. So we're going to, Rachel, you're all set, that's.
Yep, Rachel.
Thank you.
Okay, Rachel.
Nice job, Rachel. So we have Molly. Hi, Molly. Would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your presentation?
For sure. How is my sound?
Good.
Good. Awesome. Hi, everyone. So I was invited to come speak by Pam, who is a member of my board of directors. I am the executive director for Art Possible Ohio. We are the statewide service organization on the arts and disability. So we have a variety of programs across the state for all ages. So we're in schools, we have an exhibition, we have a film festival, and then we also do advocacy work with state agencies like the Ohio Arts Council, the Ohio Department of Education, to ensure that people with disabilities have equal access to the arts, and on the flip side, that museums and institutions provide equal access to not just their programming and brick and mortar sites, but also to their workforce and their leadership and all of the back of house things that you don't always think of when you think of accessibility. So Pam invited me to come talk today a little bit about arts programming and some of the work that we do with and on behalf of artists with disabilities through our Accessible Expressions Ohio exhibition. It's an annual exhibition, the call for which will go out pretty soon. It goes out in the early fall. We typically get between 150 and 200 applicants. Of those, we accept 50 to 60. We work with a group of adjudicators, usually 3 adjudicators, who decide on which artworks are going to go into the exhibition. Starting in 2021, we made it so that the exhibition will always open in an accredited art museum. It used to open in a community center, and we decided that artists with disabilities deserve and rise to the level of any other artist and thus deserve their art to be displayed in an accredited art museum. So in 2021, it opened at the Springfield Museum of Art. It's been there for 2 years. And starting next year, it will open at the Massillon Museum, which is up in kind of the Canton area. Then the exhibition, it'll be up for about a month and then it travels. It goes all over the state to galleries. We had it at the Columbus Academy School. It goes into other art museums, and we encourage the sale of artwork. And then the full price, except for like about a 20 to 30% commission that we put on top of the artist's asking price, goes back into the program. This year, I don't know if people are just like busting out because it's post-COVID, but we have sold more artwork in the first like 3 months of the exhibition than we have ever sold in an exhibition before. So that's been like really exciting. We keep joking that we're going to run out of art and we're not going to have anything to tour for the rest of the year. So my presentation today is going to talk a little bit about how we as advocates and fellow artists and creative professionals can help create environments and spaces in which artists with disabilities can really do their work well and explore in their creativity in the same way that any other professional artist would. I'm going to have a couple takeaways. As I understand, some folks provide arts instruction or arts programming at their sites. And so what this presentation will do is sort of flip the way we think about art making and arts instruction and the spaces in which we do it. It's based on my experience working at the Columbus Museum of Art and a graduate study that one of our interns did, Shannon Thacker, on pairing artists with disabilities with artists who don't have disabilities, and the experience that cross-pollination of putting artists with different lived experiences together can generate. So does anybody have any questions before while I figure out how to share my screen?
Oh, doing great.
Awesome. All right, so you should see my Canva page, and I'm going to hit present. All right. So has anyone been to the Columbus Museum of Art? If you've been, like, I see the folks in the room, maybe shoot your hand up, or if you're on the call, maybe just like send a chat or say yes. So when I worked at the Columbus Museum of Art, it was a completely different experience. Okay, yeah, we've had a few folks that have been. From what I had experienced as a student who did a Bachelor of Fine Arts, who did an arts administration degree, who had been in the arts and art education scene for for a bunch of years. There is kind of a culture around the arts of exclusivity, of you have to sort of be in the know in order to partake. And I had always heard from lots of people, like, I feel uncomfortable in art museums. I feel uncomfortable with arts experiences because I'm not creative. I'm not artistic. I can't draw. And I always wanted to like push back on that, but I didn't quite have the language for it or know how to talk about it until I started working at CMA. And I was introduced to this concept of creative thinking and studio thinking. And it has completely shaped and shifted the way that we think about creativity at Art Possible Ohio, and the way we think about access as an aesthetic, as opposed to something that is just required by law or a best practice. Rather, access should be something that is beautiful and a part of whatever it is that you're doing, a part of the design, a part of the way we think, a part of the way we work. And that commitment to making accessibility beautiful, I think helps when you're working with someone who has disabilities, in getting away from that idea of like, this is an accommodation. We're just accommodating you. By flipping that language and saying, not only is it an accommodation, but it's a beautiful accommodation. It is meant to make everyone feel better, helps shift the dialogue around accessibility. So when we talk about studio think, oh, there's my introduction. So I already said all of that. So we're going to talk today about creative thinking strategies, studio thinking strategies, and creative space making from this perspective of accessibility as an aesthetic, as something that is beautiful and compelling, and in some ways provocative and challenging. So when we talk about creativity, I like to get this definition out here because I think it really captures this concept of creativity and in its definition dispels a lot of myths around creativity. So read it real quickly, and then I'll read it out loud in a second. But having read this definition, how many of you feel as if you are a creative person? I'm looking in the room and I see no hands going up. Oh, I see one. I see one waving. I'm creative. I got it.
It's me, it's Pam.
Oh, of course you are. I know you're creative. Creativity is engaging imagination and critical thinking to generate new ideas that have value. So let's break this down a little bit. How many of you like to daydream and use your imagination? Yeah. Okay. It's summertime, some of us have vacations coming up. So we like to imagine, like, what's my vacation going to be like? What am I going to see? How is that going to relax my mind? How many of you have to solve problems in your day-to-day work? Okay. How many of you like to come up with new ideas to solve those problems? Okay. And how many of you feel that what you do in your personal life, in your public life, has value? Yeah. So by definition, we are all creative individuals. Some of us exercise it more than others. Some of us engage with it more than others, but all of us are born with this creative capacity, and it's just how we decide to exercise it. So next slide. Creativity isn't only for art types, determined by skills like drawing or painting. I don't want to tell you how many times I've heard people say, well, I'm not creative, I can only draw a stick figure. Mm-hmm. And I politely say, well, your ability to draw a stick figure has very little to do with your ability to be creative. Something you have or you don't. So we often hear like, well, I'm not a creative type, or I am a creative type. Everyone is creative. It just happens in different ways for different people. And it's not solitary. We often have this myth of like the solitary genius, like individual artists are creative and they work and toil away at their creative pursuits. But creativity is actually very collaborative, and most of our creative work comes as a result of collaboration and working together and sharing ideas. So some examples that I like to give that people might not think of as creative or creativity are things like spreadsheets. So I get really stoked about putting together a spreadsheet that works really well, that puts our organizational budget into a format that multiple people are going to be able to understand and make sense of. At first blush, you think Excel documents probably not the most creative medium, but if you are someone who really enjoys getting those numbers to line up and making it look sensible for other people, that's a creative pursuit. That's creative problem solving. Does anyone want to either hop on their Zoom or speak out in the room and talk about something that maybe they didn't think was creative, but now they're like, oh, I guess that is a creative thing that I do?
Hi, I'm Kelly. So I have always thought I was creative, and I appreciate you separating the definition of creative and not necessarily skillful. So I went to a little art college. We had to take an art class. For my art class brought my GPA down. That's how bad it was. But I'm a creative person. So you've just helped me understand that there is a difference between just being creative and not necessarily being artistic, and especially to the eye of the professor. So it might have been a beautiful thing, but you graded it very differently. But nonetheless, so I'm like sitting back here smiling, like, I am creative. This is great. I love hearing this.
Absolutely. And the difference between very creative people and kind of creative people is practice. Just like if you are an athlete who goes out and wants to be a better runner or swimmer or walker, the more you practice creativity and the more you practice the habits of mind that lead to creativity, the stronger that creative muscle gets. And so finding time in your day to do those things that bring you joy and make you feel like you're being creative. Like maybe cooking is your thing. Maybe being a mechanic is your thing. Maybe gardening is your thing. Taking a little bit of time each day to practice those creative pursuits is what is going to make that creativity muscle stronger. So when we talk about creativity, there's a couple characteristics there. Imagination, play, fluency and flexibility, meaning I can come up with a lot of ideas and then I can manipulate those ideas. Tolerance for ambiguity, which is a really hard one. And especially when we think about some of the people that we work with, we have a lot of artists who have sort of very strict schedules, very strict ways that they have to go through their day. And so helping them work on that tolerance for ambiguity can actually help them be more creative in their artwork or whatever it is they like to pursue. Curiosity. This is a big one for me. I often get stuck at the curiosity phase of creativity because the actual making and doing things phase seems really hard to me. But the reading a lot of books and learning as much as I can, well, that's fun. That's low stakes. Empathy is huge for creativity, meaning that we can put ourselves in other people's shoes. We can understand what they're going through. We can shift from our own perspective to other perspectives and sort of see a situation in its whole. And tenacity, the willingness to keep going, to have grit, to pursue a project. And even though you fail or it doesn't turn out the way you want it, you learn from that and you move on and you try again and you try again. So looking at these 8 or so characteristics, is there anything else that you think is important when you think about your creative pursuits? Other personality elements, other skills that are important to practice? Or do you see one of those that you really struggle with? I know I struggle with play. It doesn't feel like I should be allowed to play because I'm a grown-up.
I think one that's coming to my mind is kind of the ability to slow down and just be present in the moment. I don't know if that fits into something you have up there already, but like just being with whatever you're working with or on in that time.
No, it definitely does. And that's a huge thing that a lot of people talk about when they talk about creative pursuits, is this sense of flow. You often hear athletes talk about it, that they were at the game and then they just felt like they were in it and they were in the flow and they were feeling it. Or musicians who are playing music and they are able to sink into that moment. That's such an important part of creativity. And then the flip side of that, and this is a conversation I have with my kids all the time, is the importance of boredom. That we need boredom in our lives because it allows our brains to sort of wander and rest and play. And a lot of times our most creative breakthroughs happen right before we were bored and we didn't have anything to do. So I'm always telling my kids when they come up to me and they're like, oh, I'm so bored. Can I watch TV? Can I play on my phone? I'm like, no, you need to be bored. Boredom is healthy. So just sit with it. And they hate it, but every single time they're maybe bored for about 15 minutes. And the next thing you know, they have like gone off and done something really creative with their time. And so one of the pieces of advice I like to give to grownups and adults is don't be afraid to set your phone down and just sit quietly and be bored. Some of my favorite time is when I'm like sitting in traffic, because I've been able to switch my brain around and think, okay, I don't need to be annoyed that I'm in traffic. I can sort of enjoy the fact that I'm bored right now and let that just marinate. Some days though, I'm like screaming in traffic. So it's not a perfect system. So studio thinking takes all the elements of creative thinking and layers them into a place and into our practice. So in the studio, we're experimental, we're collaborative, we're supportive, and we're rebellious. So we're looking for ways to challenge what we think art making should be as much as possible. So when I worked at the Columbus Museum of Art, I had a couple rules that were annoying to some people, but I felt like they really helped create this space for studio thinking. So when it came to consumable materials, things like puffballs or gems or sequins, I didn't put a whole lot of parameters on how many a student or a person was allowed to use. When it came to recyclables, you could use as many recyclables as you wanted for as many projects as you wanted. I even had a class once where I had a student who was being kind of a smart mouth, and he cut open one of the washable markers, like your basic Crayola marker. He peeled out the marker part and then started using that to create art with. And I had this moment where I was like, of two minds. One, not cool that you're destroying stuff. Two, how cool that you took that apart and figured it out how to use it that way. And that philosophy of allowing kids and grownups to really challenge how a material should be used really allows for that creative exploration to happen. So rules that aren't really rules, allowing people to explore and experiment and break what might be a perceived rule can really help in that studio thinking space. And so I'm curious, has anyone at work, and sometimes this is called the act now, apologize later. Can you think of an example of a time when you did that and it felt maybe not good, but it felt like the thing that you needed to do at the time? And again, if you're on Zoom and you want to just click on and talk, feel free to do that or put something in the chat box.
Molly, say that again. What's the question?
The question would be, was there a time when you needed to experiment and break some rules and sort of take the approach of act now because I think it's the thing I need to do. And if it ends up being a thing that upsets someone, I'll apologize later.
Every day. I do every day. That is true. With multiple different aspects, for sure.
Awesome. I love that I have a bunch of like, you're also punk rock. It's so great. I think it is so important to give, and it ties into this idea of permission to fail. Like giving our artists, giving the people that we spend time with, our colleagues, permission to fail and letting them know that we can be brave and we can make mistakes and you're not going to quote unquote get in trouble. So when we think about art projects, so I've given you all of this like big up here, lofty stuff. How does it happen in practice? And an example I like to use is the artist Monet. So, and I like to use him because everybody knows who Monet is. He's the water lilies guy. If you have been in any kind of art museum, gift shop, you've seen the water lilies artwork. In another slide, if you haven't recognized who he is yet, you'll see a painting, you'll be like, oh, it's that guy. I got him. Monet was an artist who worked in France at the back end of the 19th century, so late 1800s. And when we think about Monet, a lot of times in a lot of projects, like school projects or art museum projects, we reduce him to the kind of paintings that he made. We ask questions like, what did he paint? How did he paint? When did he paint? Where did he paint? But we don't really ever ask, why did he paint? Why did he make the art that he did? And so here's our water lilies. This is, if you were sort of like, I'm not sure, now you know, this is Monet. So what did he paint? He painted flowers, he painted landscapes, he painted gardens, he painted things that were very objectively beautiful. So if you were going to build an art project around this type of Monet, what you might do is say, okay, group of artists, what we're going to do today is paint gardens and paint landscapes, which is fine. It's a really like lovely way to spend an afternoon to sort of paint a landscape, but it doesn't quite get into your brain in the way that a more creative question might be. So take it to the next level. How did he paint? He was an impressionist. He painted with these little tiny dabs of paint. And so if we were asking, how did Monet paint? Then the resulting project might be that we create impressionist landscapes and we teach everyone how to paint with little teeny tiny dabs of paint, which again, fun, relaxing, but doesn't really exercise that creative part of our brain. We're still in that art professor place that we were talking about earlier, where it's like, your painting needs to be beautiful, but is it necessarily creative? So take it to the next level. When did he paint? Well, end of the 1800s. So people were just getting to have this thing called leisure time. And so he painted a lot of representations of the upper middle class experiencing leisure time. So then we might say, okay, well, we're going to paint pictures of people experiencing leisure time now. Maybe we make that connection. And so then we add this extra element of, how do we paint people of the middle class? And do we have a conversation maybe about that context? And then where did he paint? Well, he painted outside, and that was revolutionary at the time. So now we're going to move everyone outside. We're all going to paint outside. But still, we're not quite getting to the why and the thing that makes it truly creative and interesting. And so when we ask the question, why, then we come to this really wonderful quote by Monet, where he says, the light constantly changes, and that alters the atmosphere and the beauty of things every minute. So now if this becomes our prompt, well, what does that mean? How does that exercise our brain differently from painting little dabs or painting outside? What do we then have to think about if the question is, how do you paint light? How do you paint change? How do you represent a beauty that changes all the time? Any ideas?
Watch something all day long and watch it change.
To change. How else? Think about your daily life and the close looking that you might do. What are things that in your life that change? And how would you represent that? How would you capture that? And that is a more complicated, juicier question. And it really doesn't matter if you do it with paint, and it doesn't really matter if you do it outside, and it doesn't really matter if it's a certain time period. It's asking a more complex question. And so when we were at the art museum, and in the work we do now with our artists through Art Possible Ohio, we try to ask questions that are juicier and more complicated that don't have a direct answer that is about, well, we have to use paint. We have to use colored pencil. We have to do it this way. Because this allows us to step out of that idea that creativity is only for art types. We might have an artist who the way that they are able to represent this question is in gluing pieces of wood together, or in using pyrography and doing wood burning. And so we come up with, instead of projects like we're all going to paint like impressionists today, we would do creative challenges. So we would start with these big ideas. We would try to make real world connections. So why does the concept of change matter? Well, because everything changes all the time in our daily lives. And so we need to have a tolerance for ambiguity. We need to understand what change means. We try to put thoughtful parameters around it. So rules that aren't rules. Like we might throw a parameter on there, like you have to paint or you have to represent change and light that changes, but you can only do it using cardboard. And so now it's like, oh, I have this very bizarre creative challenge that I need to work within. We give people time. So instead of bumping our students through or artists through, like you have to do this and then this and then this, we would introduce a project and leave a vast amount of time for people to work and let their brains ruminate and for them to talk to each other and create that flow space. We would have questions without answers or questions with many answers. So the answer to the question of what did Monet paint has one answer or two answers. It's like he painted plants and gardens, he painted landscapes, sometimes he painted people. But when you ask the question of how do you represent light and change, well, that is a question that has an infinite number of answers. He only picked one, which was to paint, but you could see how any other artist or any other creative person might have multiple answers to that. And then we put process over product. So we would have some art classes and we have some professional developments where no finished project is ever created. And instead, what we really celebrate and what we really try to hone in on is this idea of process. How are you doing the practice of creative thinking rather than generating artworks? We like to use unexpected materials. So Megan, my colleague, likes to joke that one of my favorite things is trash, and she's 100% right. I love recyclables and garbage and art supplies that are not actually art supplies. So it is not unusual for me to go to the thrift store, spend $50, come home with just a pile of stuff. And then that's my art supplies. That's the thing I'm going to make art out of. And it's not expensive and it's not pretty, but man, it's fun to work with. And then let it be weird, which is, I think, our good philosophy for life in general. Just let it be a little bit weird all the time. So some of the creative challenges we like to work with, and we've done this with a lot of our artists. What if we discovered a new planet where everything was fluffy? What might we find there? They can be funny like that. Or if you were a superhero, how would you design your secret lair? Or sometimes we like to dive into things that are more complicated. Like, what does it mean to be human? And especially when we're thinking about this idea of disability. What is disability? What isn't disability? How do we define human and humanity in our world? And how are we being of service to people when we have a narrow definition of humanity? How can we expand that? And then how do you experience time? Can you make a map of time? When we think about the way our time is so regimented, the difference between industrial time versus biological time, and allowing space for that creative thinking to happen. Now, in order to do this kind of work, one of the things we talk about a lot with our artists is studio. Do you have a space to be creative? What is your creative home? And so for a lot of us, it might not be a traditional art studio. If your creative thing is cooking, your creative space is the kitchen. And so making sure that you have the kitchen that is going to support your creative needs. if your creative thing is Excel spreadsheets, making sure that you have the proper laptop, computer setup, and office space in order to do your spreadsheets, that you have all of the tools that you need. So things we talk about a lot: adaptable work surfaces, visible storage, variety of materials, objects of interest, light, sound, scent, texture, and the work of other artists and artists that are peers. So make the space. When we talk about studios, I've got Open Door Studio here on the bottom, and I've got another example of really flexible seating and different levels up on the top from a classroom. Adaptable work surfaces are really important. So making sure that you have easels as well as tables, that tables are, you can roll up to them, you can walk up to them, you can stand, you can sit. This was a constant fight and something we talk about a lot at art museums. If you have ever taken a group to a museum and you've had to use whatever their studio space is, chances are their tables are not accessible. And so what we would have to do, what we do a lot, is go into spaces that have art rooms and art spaces and explain to them the importance of having multiple ways for people to like actually sit down and make their art and be comfortable. Has anyone ever had that experience where they've gone to an art museum or a library, or libraries are usually a lot better about it, but the space was just not conducive to your body or the bodies of people that you had with you? It used to happen to me constantly. Visible storage, so making sure that there is lots of different types of materials and you can see what all the materials are and you can get to all the materials. So I like this philosophy for my home life as well. I try to make sure that everything is accessible. We have lots of kids in our house, 3 daughters, and making sure that they can get to all the things that they need. It inspires self-efficacy and also makes your house more fun to be in. Having a variety of materials. So there's this idea that if we're doing art, we have to use art materials. We have to use paint. We have to use pastels. All of that stuff is really expensive and only for very specific kinds of creative pursuits. So we try to emphasize the importance with our artists of using kind of whatever you can find around the house. During COVID, we did a workshop with a couple of artists who are part of our Accessible Expressions Ohio team. And it was basically making art with what you can find. And we used a lot of natural materials. We used a lot of recyclables and just things that you could find around the house. Objects of interest. So a weird thing about me is that I collect bricks. I have bricks around my house. I think they're really cool. So learning what it is that visually, tactily, you enjoy having around as just an object that is interesting. That does not have to be an art object. Some artists really enjoy having pine cones. I used to work with an artist and her favorite thing was pine cones. She would line them up all around her and she would like look at them and touch them. And it's not like she made art about pine cones. It was just something that she really enjoyed spending time around. It was something she liked visually, something she liked tactily. And so we would find really interesting pine cones for her to play with. And sometimes she would come to the studio and that's all she would do is just like check out the pine cones and not really make anything. And that was sort of like fueling her creative brain so that when she went on to her next creative project, she had all of this like good pine cone energy in her head. And so having objects like that around so that artists can play with them and manipulate them and think about them and look at them helps just give your brain a place to rest. I'm sure there's lots of people in this room on this call who have collections. And collecting is such an important part of creativity because it's giving our brains a thing that we like to rest on and turn around in our minds. Does anyone have a weird collection? I love hearing about people's weird collections.
I have a weird collection. It's like Kachina dolls.
you know what that is?
Yeah, I do. Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
Over a dozen of them, I guess, and over the years, and, you know, Zuni stone carvings and things like that.
That's very cool. Anybody else?
Somebody said coffee mugs and beer steins.
Beer steins are good. So are coffee mugs. Let's get one
I
more.
used to collect all my movie tickets back when I went to movies. I had like this huge stack of them. I don't know why, I just couldn't throw them away.
And what is it about the Cochina dolls or the beer stein? Like, why do they make you happy? Do you know? Can you like, or
Well,
is it
they're colorful and each one's unique and different. There's not two that are like anywhere in the world. So, you know, that makes it fun to have that. And I just look at them, you know, when I'm sitting there and think, you know, somebody comes to my house, they think I'm weird, but it's always good, you know, to invite someone that's like, you know, the Jehovah's Witness will come to your door, you know, and they try to convert you and everything. And you say, well, step in. And then they immediately will leave.
Oh my God, I love it. So the act of collecting, it gives us a little bit of like an endorphin boost, and that helps in our creative pursuit. So if you're not someone who has ever thought of having a collection before, think about it. Think about, is there a thing that you find interesting, either visually or conceptually, that you would be willing to have a few of them around and to sort of ruminate on? And they're also, that kind of thing is important to have in a studio space or in a creative space. So my husband, he loves to cook. Cooking is like his favorite thing. It was one of the things he picked up on over the pandemic. He wanted to get better at it. And so now he has this quirky little collection of knives, which on its surface sounds like borderline creepy, but he uses them for cooking. So it's not like, but they're just like, they're cool kitchen knives that he has collected that he thinks are interesting. And sometimes he uses them for cooking and sometimes it's just what he has. So having that little thing that is your weird thing can help with that creative, with those creative brain juices. I see I've got a chat on here. Okay, someone else said coffee mugs and beer steins. So light, sound, scent, and texture. Whatever your creative space is, or the creative space that you're creating for other people, make sure that it has good light or adjustable light, that it has sounds that are pleasant. Some people love to have music when they're working. Some people listen to podcasts. Some people want silence. So making sure that that sound is adaptable, that there is not overpowering scent, or if you are going to have a scent, that it's a scent that is sort of mild and easy to be around, and that you have things that have texture. And that's where things like your collections can come into play. Like that pine cone texture I was talking about that really inspired the one artist that we worked with. If there's someone who likes to work with fabric, having lots of different fabric textures that they can work with and touch. I like showing this image of the studio at the Columbus Museum of Art because you can see, like, visually there are lots of textures around the room. It's very text rich. So you see lots of different ways to identify materials, either with written language or with using the actual material as the label. So that there are lots of different ways, depending on how you choose to communicate or how you choose to be in a space, that you can be in that space and still feel comfortable and still feel like you can navigate and do the work that you need to do. And then the work of other artists and artists that are peers. So it's so important to demonstrate that there is a space for you as a creative professional. So when I was starting out as a young woman in the arts, so many of my art history classes only talked about men who are artists, and that was frustrating. It made me feel like in order to be an artist, I had to be a man, which is not the most inspiring thing. If you are going into a career in business and the only people in the only professors you see, the only teachers you see don't look like you, that can be a really hard thing to do. You feel like you're constantly fighting that uphill battle. And so one of the things we talk to museums and galleries about a lot is in your exhibition schedule, in your collecting policy, how do you represent artists with disabilities, artists of color, artists with intersectional identities? Because if you are only collecting artists who are white, or you are only collecting artists who do not have disabilities, and you're not representing creative professionals in your collections that have disabilities, and you're not being upfront about that, then if I come into your museum and I use a wheelchair, or I am blind, or I am deaf, and I don't see other artists who use wheelchairs, who are blind, who are deaf, who are making a career of this, I'm going to think it's a lot harder, which it is, to become an artist who has a disability and have my work respected and represented. And so making a concerted effort to collect and to represent artists with disabilities, and do so in a way that doesn't pigeonhole them as like outsider artists, or identify them specifically as artists with disabilities, but instead puts them at the same level as any other artist, is really important, because there are 1 in 5 people in our world who have a disability. And so by my count, 1 in 5 artists in a museum's collection should have a disability. 1 in 5 exhibitions in a gallery should be of work by artists who have disabilities. 1 in 5 musical compositions, plays, all of that, dance performances should be representing disability. And so when you're making spaces for creativity, put the artwork, put the stories of, share the experiences of artists who have disabilities. And this is just a picture from our recent Accessible Expressions opening with one of our artists, Brianna, and another artist, Steve. Steve is a photographer. He brings his camera everywhere. He photographs everything. And Brianna is an artist who created, I think you can see it up on the wall here, this series of tiles that have like a watercolory almost effect on them. And it's just a really wonderful thing to see artists who are peers in a way get to share their creative pursuits together. And so these are some examples of artists I like to highlight when we're talking about artists who have made a career out of their work who have disabilities. So Mari Katayama, who is a Japanese artist who is a prosthesis wearer. She makes a lot of art about the experience of wearing a prosthesis and what that means for what she looks like and how people perceive her. Stephen Wiltshire, who is an artist of color who is on the spectrum, who creates these beautiful, elaborate cityscapes that are huge and detailed and complicated. John Bramblett, who is an artist who is blind. We had him speak for one of our possibility talks. You can actually see it on our website. It was a wonderful talk about how, if I'm an artist with a disability, how do I make a career out of that? How do I get my work out there? How do I professionalize my craft so that I can be taken seriously and get exhibitions and make money off of my art? And the incomparable Frida Kahlo, who suffered an injury when she was in her youth and built a career out of her art. Despite that injury, because of that injury, it was a part of who she was. So the last thing I'll say about this whole conversation around creativity, studio thinking, creating places and experiences where we can be creative, where we can help the people we serve be more creative, where we can make the arts and artistic experiences more accessible for not just people with disabilities, but for ourselves, for those of us who think to ourselves, oh, I'm not creative, I can't draw. Or, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not a creative type. Or, I'm not creative, all I do is work on budgets all day. This is a quote from Sir Ken Robinson that I absolutely love. He is also a person with a disability. He's a philosopher who has done a ton of work on creativity and education. And he says we have to go from what is essentially an industrial model of education, a manufacturing model, which is based on linearity and conformity and batching people. So think about how we, as a society, have this like need to label people, and how can we like kind of remove ourselves from that and think why? He says we have to move to a model that is based more on principles of agriculture. We have to recognize that human flourishing is not a mechanical process, it's an organic process. And you cannot predict the outcome of human development. All you can do, like a farmer, is create the conditions under which they will begin to flourish. So thinking about, instead of how do I categorize people, how do I categorize tasks, how do I move people through the experience of life in this like regimented way, and rather I'm gonna make a garden, I'm gonna make a farm, and I'm going to create the conditions, good soil, good light, good water, good material, and see what grows out of that. It's hard to do. There's a lot of prep work on the front end, but the nice thing is once you've created that wonderful environment and you've asked those challenging questions, then you can just sort of sit back and see what comes up from it. So that is the end of my formal presentation. I'll see if anybody has any questions, any thoughts, any ways that this might relate to the work that you're doing or to experiences you're having right now when you think about creativity in your own work and in your own life and the people that you work with and serve, and how this might shift a little bit how you even view yourself. Or if you're someone who heard my thing about collections and you're like, I'm gonna go out and start a collection right here, right now. What is it that you want to collect?
I will say that I was definitely one of those people that would look at you and say, I'm not creative. I think the most creative time of my life is when I'm helping a child decorate their Valentine box. Honestly. But I do appreciate all the information that you shared today. It really opened up my mind as far as when I'm creative, how often I'm creative. Even if it's, working in my flower beds or things I'm putting together for dinner, or how I'm rearranging my towels in my bathroom. I mean, I'm creative all the time, and I really never even thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that information, because it really helped me realize that creativity comes in so many different ways than just me thinking I can't draw, I can't paint. That's those typical forms of art that I looked at. So
It's good to tell yourself too, like when you're rearranging those towels, take a moment and say to yourself, man, I'm being creative right now. God, it feels good.
You can come do it at my house anytime.
And I am definitely one of those people that I love spreadsheets. So to me, that's very relaxing and calming when I am getting something that's organized and looks nice, and I love to share that. So that is my creativity, is being on the computer and creating those forms. And so
I like to collect those people who like spreadsheets because I like to stay away from them.
I hate them. I hate dealing with the computer entirely.
I love that he answered 2 questions in 1 comment. He's like, I collect people. That's my collection.
Alrighty, well, if no one has anything else to share, I did want to thank everyone for joining us today and remind all of you that the next meeting will take place in person at the Pickerington Regional Office on August 24th. We will still have Zoom, but we'd love to have you here in person. We have all kinds of goodies, and it's good just to see each other. I wanted to thank Molly and Rachel for their presentations today. You shared lots of valuable information, and we couldn't do this without you. I did want to give the members of the Excellence Network a chance who haven't spoke yet. any type of progress that they could share with the other providers on outcomes that you're a part of. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes just to kind of shout out there and give us some examples.
And while you're thinking about that, Molly, I'd like to thank you as well. Rachel, I thank you every day, but just because what you talked about today is so important, and I know Pam takes it to heart. And she's done such a great job of sharing your message here in Fairfield County, but we just, to look at things in a different way is so important, and I just appreciate your message. Thanks for spending the time with us this morning.
Thank you, guys. Your work is also incredibly important. And Pam talks about, first of all, you guys are so lucky to have a Pam. We're so grateful for her and our organization. Yeah. And she talks about the important work that you do all the time and how she can help support it. And so just thanks for inviting me. It was fun to talk to you guys today, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'll hop off.
So I'm looking at the screen and the people in the room, and I see Kira, and I see Courtney, and I see Aaron, because Aaron's got so much to share because he's been here so long. We've been talking about quite a bit the last few months about sharing some of those requirements for being Excellence Member Network, or Excellence Network members. So, if you have anything you'd like to share, that long list that I didn't bring in front of me, I know there's 3 or 4 different categories that you share out if you'd like to do that now. Or remember that next week, I probably just won't call on everyone at the same time, but specific people. Just that's kind of the guy I am, right, Kira? I see you smiling about that.
I'm one. I'm just gonna speak. I promise you.
It's the floor is yours.
Sometimes it takes me a while, so I do apologize. What I want to share, I was listening to everybody's different stories. The first one that was given, I think it is it's different in the day program. It's a little bit more difficult when you're talking about service outcomes and the documentation and providing that person-centered planning. Obviously, that is ideal, but when you're talking about large groups and everybody has different things that they are trying to accomplish and different goals they're trying to meet, you got to get really creative on how you can get some of the, can you guys hear me? Everybody looks frozen and it's just very quiet. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, maybe she can't hear.
We hear you.
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Oh, okay, I can hear you now. It might be my internet. The internet sucks here. I'm sorry. But something that I was very proud of and what I would like to see, this is essentially, what the idea is when we're talking about people who we're teaching independence and allowing them to do things independently outside of what we do sheltered here, like taking people out to bowling and going out to eat, which is great things, don't get me wrong, but like really pushing individuals to be out in the community and doing things on their own without, using us as a tool, as a resource, but really kind of leading that stuff and heading it. And so there is an individual in our program that happens to be homosexual, which is in itself, it can be very, sometimes embarrassing. People don't accept it and different things like that. And it can be hard for them to build relationships. And one of their goals is for them to build relationships with other people and socialize and all this good stuff. And so what we've been pushing this individual to do is to start an advocacy group for individuals who are homosexual and do have a disability outside of just like our program. So he's actually started an advocacy group at the library, and they meet once a week. It's in Columbus, and he invites different people we know, and you don't have to be a part of that community, but he started that group, and this is the second time that they've done it. Only a couple of people showed up, but I think it is an excellent start and kind of one of those goals that we should all strive to help the individuals get to do things that they really want to do or things they're passionate about, helping them being able to do that on their own without it having to be in a underneath this umbrella of ADS or inside their home, that type of thing. So I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have it's a progress story, but it started out with outcomes in a different setting. So we had an agency reach out to us or a county board reach out to us in search of shared living for someone. And essentially his desire was to feel included in a family. He had been dismissed his entire life. He had been rejected and kicked out of places, and all he wanted was to be included. And so we were able to find him a placement that was perfect, and he's thrived since. His behaviors have decreased. He actually has alone time. He's learning how to manage his anger. He's creating community connections. He's absolutely just thriving in this situation. It's hard because there's not really any service documentation for all of that. I mean, there are for the community connections that he's made, but it is a success story in itself.
Very cool. Thanks, Alex.
All right, I think that's all of our 10 members. So I'd like all of you to have a great rest of your day. Please try and join us next month in person. We'd love to see you. For those of you who have not added their name and email to the chat, please do so I can send you your certificate. Without that information, I'm not able to do that. And for the 10 members, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll stay on and start that meeting. So it's good to see all of you, and see you next month.